The crystalline spires of Nexus Prime stretched toward the void like frozen lightning, their surfaces pulsing with data streams that flowed through the station's neural networks at light speed. In the Grand Assembly Hall, 500 beings from across the galaxy sat in perfect silence, their various forms of respiration creating a symphony of atmospheric processing that the station's environmental systems seamlessly accommodated. Commander Dextal stood at the center of the amphitheater, his imposing figure a testament to 3 millennia of Valerian evolution. Where flesh had once been weak, chrome and titanium now gleamed beneath translucent blue skin that revealed the intricate network of cybernetic pathways flowing like liquid starlight through his body. His left arm, a masterwork of engineering that could crush durasteel or perform microsurgery with equal precision, rested casually on the podium while his enhanced vocal cords projected his words with perfect clarity to every corner of the vast chamber. Assembled representatives of the lesser worlds, Dextal began, his voice carrying the subtle harmonic undertones that marked a Valerian of the highest augmentation tier, witness the next phase of galactic evolution. Behind him, holographic displays materialized from the air itself, showing star maps that pulsed with the rhythm of expanding Valerian territory. Each conquered system glowed with the soft blue light that indicated successful integration, worlds where primitive biological limitations had been replaced with the perfection of cybernetic enhancement. General Vexra materialized beside him, her form shimmering into existence as her personal cloaking field deactivated. Her optical arrays, 7 crystalline lenses that had replaced her original eyes, focused on different sections of the audience simultaneously. Each lens processed information across spectrums invisible to unaugmented vision, thermal, electromagnetic, quantum fluctuation patterns that revealed the emotional states and biological stress markers of every being present. Fear, she whispered to Dextal through their neural link, the communication passing between them faster than thought. Awe, submission, the usual responses. The demonstration began with a simple request. A massive block of compressed neutronium, weighing several tons, was lowered into the arena floor. The assembled delegates stirred uneasily. Such material was used in the construction of battlecruiser hulls, requiring industrial machinery to manipulate. Dextal approached the block with casual indifference. His right leg, replaced entirely, with a cybernetic limb that contained its own fusion microcell, adjusted its internal pressure systems with a barely audible hiss. His augmented spine, reinforced with molecular bonded ceramics, aligned perfectly as he gripped the neutronium block with his enhanced hands. The metal groaned in protest, then yielded. Dextal lifted the impossibly heavy mass above his head with one arm while his other hand began to reshape it like clay. His fingertips, equipped with molecular manipulators, rearranged the material's atomic structure in real time, crafting an intricate sculpture that depicted the Valerian conquest of their first neighboring system. Biological flesh would be crushed instantly by such density, Dextal explained as he worked, his voice never straining despite supporting tons of weight. The limitations of carbon-based evolution are absolute. Observe what transcendence offers, as he spoke. His cranial implants began to glow more brightly. The neural processors embedded in his skull were simultaneously calculating orbital mechanics for 3 star systems, composing a symphony in 17-part harmony, and running combat simulations against 12 different alien military formations. The results of each task appeared as holographic displays around his head, demonstrating cognitive multitasking that no biological brain could achieve. The Korthak delegate, an insectoid being whose chitin shell trembled with each of Dextal's movements, raised one of his forearms tentatively. Commander, forgive the question, but how do you maintain individuality? Does the networking not create a collective consciousness? Vexra's optical arrays swiveled to focus on the Korthak with predatory precision. An excellent inquiry, she said, her voice carrying subtle harmonics that indicated amusement. Watch carefully. Her arm began to transform, the synthetic flesh peeling back like flower petals to reveal the engineering marvel beneath. Her forearm reconfigured itself into a plasma cannon, energy conduits glowing as they channeled power from her internal fusion cell. The weapon's targeting system linked directly to her enhanced visual cortex, creating targeting solutions for every being in the chamber in less than a nanosecond. "We are networked, yes," she continued as the weapon powered up with an ominous whine. "But we are not diminished. We are amplified. Each Valerian maintains their core consciousness while accessing the knowledge and capabilities of our entire civilization." To demonstrate, she began to speak in the native languages of every species present, switching between them with perfect fluency, while her weapon systems tracked multiple targets simultaneously. Her consciousness was simultaneously accessing the Valerian Cultural Database, monitoring 17 different military installations across the galaxy, and composing a philosophical treatise on the nature of enhanced consciousness. "The network grants us perspective beyond the limitations of singular biological experience," Vexra explained as her arm reconfigured back to its humanoid appearance. "We are individuals with access to infinity." The demonstration escalated as more Valerian officers entered the arena. Each showcased different aspects of their enhancement. Lieutenant Kexmoth's legs, replaced with anti-gravity generators, allowed him to move through three-dimensional space like a dancer, defying the station's artificial gravity field. Chief Engineer Texavel's hands separated into dozens of micro-manipulators, each working on different components of a complex device, while her enhanced mind coordinated their movements with supernatural precision. The crescendo came when they worked together on a challenge that would have required months of planning for unenhanced beings. Using only materials present in the chamber, they constructed a functioning faster-than-light communication relay in less than 10 minutes. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, their enhanced minds sharing calculations and adjustments in real time through their neural network. As the device activated and began receiving transmissions from Valerian colonies, thousands of light years away, a profound silence settled over the assembly. The message was clear. This was not just superior technology, but superior evolution itself. "You have witnessed the pinnacle of galactic development," Dextal announced as the demonstration concluded. "For 3,000 years, the Valerian Empire has offered this gift to every species we encounter: enhanced strength, accelerated cognition, networked consciousness, virtual immortality through cybernetic redundancy, freedom from the tyranny of biological limitation." He gestured to the star map, which updated to show their latest territorial acquisition, a small, unremarkable system designated as Terra 3. "Our scouts have recently discovered a species in this sector that achieved interstellar travel through primitive chemical propulsion. They call themselves humans, and remarkably, they show no signs of cybernetic enhancement whatsoever." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. In an age where even the most primitive spacefaring civilizations had basic augmentations, the idea of achieving faster-than-light travel with unmodified biology seemed impossible. "These humans present a fascinating anomaly," Vexra added, her optical arrays displaying tactical readouts of human vessels. "Their ships are crude but functional, their technology innovative despite its biological origins. They represent perhaps the last truly unenhanced species to achieve interstellar capability." Dextal's enhanced features shifted into what might have once been called a smile. "We extend to them the same offer we have made to countless species before. Join us in transcendence, or remain forever trapped in the limitations of flesh. The choice, as always, is theirs to make." The holographic displays shifted to show human population centers, their cities glowing like scattered jewels across their planet's surface. To the assembled delegates, humanity appeared both fascinating and pitiable, a species that had somehow achieved the impossible while remaining shackled to their biological origins. As the assembly began to disperse, none could imagine that these unaugmented humans might possess something the Valerians had lost in their pursuit of perfection. The galaxy's greatest empire was about to encounter its greatest mystery, and neither side could predict the profound changes that awaited them. All. The human exploration vessel Soul's Pride drifted through the asteroid field of the Kepler 442 system like a sleeping giant, her hull scarred by micrometeorite impacts and the harsh radiation of deep space. Captain Li Huan stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display with the patience of a man who had spent 15 years navigating the void between stars. His weathered hands, marked by decades of shipboard life, rested on the command console, flesh and bone that had never been enhanced, never been improved beyond what evolution had provided. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Navigator Parkmina from her station. Her dark eyes tracked the incoming signatures with the kind of intuitive understanding that came from years of reading space the way ancient mariners read the sea. No cybernetic implants enhanced her perception, yet she could predict stellar drift patterns and gravitational anomalies with an accuracy that often surprised even herself. The Valerian fleet materialized from hyperspace with the precision of a surgical strike. 12 vessels arranged themselves in a perfect geometric formation around the lone human ship, their hulls gleaming with the same biomechanical integration that characterized all Valerian technology. Each ship pulsed with data transmissions as their crews shared tactical information through their neural networks at light speed. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Yun Su, her fingers dancing across analog controls that would have seemed primitive to any augmented species. "They're requesting permission to board." Engineer Kim Tae looked up from his maintenance console, wiping grease from his hands with a cloth that had seen better days. "Captain, our defensive systems are, well, they're not exactly designed for this kind of encounter." Li Huan nodded, his expression calm despite the overwhelming technological disparity. The Soul's Pride was a testament to human ingenuity, a fusion-powered vessel that had crossed 30 light-years using nothing but human mathematics, human engineering, and human determination. But against the Valerian fleet, she was little more than a rowboat facing a modern navy. "Grant them permission," Li Huan decided. "Let's see what they want." The Valerian boarding party materialized directly on the Soul's Pride's bridge through advanced teleportation technology, their forms shimmering into existence with a cascade of displaced photons. Commander Dextal's enhanced frame immediately began analyzing the human vessel's systems, his cybernetic sensors cataloging every component, every design choice, every apparent limitation. What he found puzzled him profoundly. The bridge was cramped, by Valerian standards, filled with analog displays and manual controls that required physical manipulation. The crew moved through their duties with practiced efficiency, but their actions were slow, deliberate, limited by the reaction times of biological nervous systems. Most disturbing of all, his deep-range scanners confirmed what the initial reports had suggested: these beings possessed no cybernetic enhancements whatsoever. "Fascinating," General Vexra commented as she materialized beside him, her optical arrays scanning the human crew with the intensity of a scientist examining a new species of primitive life. "Their neural activity is entirely confined to organic tissue. I'm detecting no artificial intelligence augmentation, no cognitive acceleration, no enhanced memory storage." Parkmina watched the aliens with careful attention, noting how their movements seemed almost too fluid, too precise. Their eyes, or in Vexra's case, her optical arrays, moved in patterns that suggested they were processing far more information than any human could handle simultaneously. Yet there was something oddly mechanical about their behavior, as if they were following predetermined algorithms rather than genuine curiosity. "Welcome aboard the Soul's Pride," Li Huan said, stepping forward with the confidence of a man who had negotiated with space pirates, corporate executives, and alien traders across half the galaxy. "I'm Captain Li Huan. How can we assist you?" Dextal's enhanced vocal cords produced perfect Korean, his neural processors having analyzed and mastered the language within nanoseconds of hearing it spoken. "Captain, I am Commander Dextal of the Valerian Empire. We have come to offer your species the greatest gift in galactic history." The Valerian commander gestured, and holographic displays materialized in the air around them, showing the transformation process that had elevated the Valerians from biological beings to their current enhanced state. The images depicted the replacement of weak flesh with durable cybernetics, the expansion of limited organic brains with quantum processors, the networking of individual consciousness into a collective intelligence that spanned star systems. "Your species has achieved something remarkable," Vexra added, her multiple optical lenses focusing on different crew members simultaneously. Interstellar travel using only biological cognition is unprecedented. However, you are clearly operating far below your potential. Kim Tae frowned as he watched the demonstrations, his engineer's mind automatically analyzing the technology being displayed. It's impressive, he admitted. But why would we want to change what we are? The question seemed to genuinely baffle the Valerians. Dextel's processors ran through thousands of first-contact scenarios from their databases, but none had prepared him for a species that would question the obvious benefits of enhancement. Every civilization they had encountered had eagerly embraced augmentation once shown its advantages. Observe, Dextel said, extending his cybernetic arm. The limb began to transform, mechanical components shifting and reconfiguring until it had become a precision manufacturing tool. Within seconds, he had fabricated a complex device from raw materials in the ship's structure, a quantum communicator that could have taken the Soul's Pride's crew months to build with their primitive methods. Enhanced strength, unlimited endurance, cognitive processing speeds that exceed biological limitations by orders of magnitude, he explained as his arm returned to its humanoid configuration. We offer freedom from pain, from aging, from the countless failures of organic evolution. Yun-Su studied the Valerians with the careful attention of someone whose job was to understand alien psychology. She noticed how they moved in perfect synchronization, how their conversations seemed to flow along predetermined patterns, how their emotional responses appeared calculated rather than spontaneous. What happens to individuality? She asked quietly. When you're all connected to the same network, processing the same information, optimizing for the same parameters, do you still make choices, or do the choices make themselves? The question struck at something the Valerians hadn't considered in centuries. Vexra's optical arrays flickered as she processed the inquiry, accessing databases of philosophical discourse that had been largely abandoned since the completion of their species transformation. We are more than individual, she replied finally. We are optimal. Each Valerian contributes to and benefits from our collective knowledge. We have eliminated the inefficiencies of individual perspective. Park Mina exchanged a glance with her captain. In that wordless communication, something no neural network could replicate, they shared a moment of understanding that encompassed years of shared experience, mutual respect, and the kind of intuitive connection that existed between beings who had chosen to trust each other with their lives. That's exactly what we're trying to preserve, Li Huan said gently. Our inefficiencies. The concept was so alien to Valerian thinking that Dextel's processors spent several microseconds attempting to parse it. Inefficiency was the enemy of progress, the barrier to optimal function, the flaw that enhancement existed to eliminate. Why would any species choose to maintain limitations when perfection was within reach? Captain, Dextel said with the patience of someone explaining elementary concepts to a child, your vessel took 15 years to travel a distance our ships can cover in days. Your crew requires rest, sustenance, and medical care that our enhanced forms have transcended. You are vulnerable to radiation, temperature extremes, and countless environmental hazards that cannot harm us. Surely you can see the benefits of improvement? Kim Tae wiped his hands again and grinned, an expression that carried warmth, humor, and a dozen subtle emotional nuances that the Valerians' enhanced senses catalogued, but could not truly understand. Sure, we're slow and fragile, and we break down a lot. But we built this ship with our own hands, figured out faster than light travel with our own minds, and chose to come out here because we were curious about what we might find. He gestured around the cramped, inefficient bridge with obvious pride. Every bolt, every circuit, every line of code, it came from human imagination, not from a database, not from a collective consciousness, but from individual people making individual choices to create something that had never existed before. The silence that followed was profound. The Valerians' enhanced minds processed the implications of Kim Tae's words, but something in their logical frameworks resisted the conclusion. They had achieved perfection through optimization, eliminated waste through enhancement, transcended limitation through augmentation. The idea that these The asteroid designated VX7429 had been transformed into something unprecedented in Valerian history, a testing facility designed to accommodate biological beings. Massive atmospheric processors carved breathable spaces into the rock, while gravity generators created Earth-normal conditions throughout the complex. The Valerians approached the construction with their characteristic efficiency, but beneath their calculated precision lay something that hadn't existed in their culture for millennia: genuine curiosity. Commander Dextal stood in the central observation deck, watching as the final components of the testing arena materialized through molecular assemblers. His enhanced consciousness was simultaneously monitoring 17 different construction projects, analyzing atmospheric composition data, and running predictive models for the upcoming trials. Yet despite this vast cognitive capability, he found himself repeatedly returning to the puzzle of human achievement. "Their refusal defies all logical parameters," he said to General Vexra, who materialized beside him in a cascade of displaced photons. "No species has ever declined enhancement after witnessing its benefits." Vexra's optical arrays focused on the human vessel docked at the asteroid's northern port. The Soul's Pride looked absurdly primitive against the backdrop of Valerian technology, yet her crew had somehow crossed the void between stars using nothing but biological intuition and mechanical engineering. "Perhaps," she suggested, "we have failed to adequately demonstrate the superiority of our evolution. The testing protocols were designed to be comprehensive and irrefutable. Physical trials would showcase enhanced strength and endurance. Cognitive challenges would demonstrate superior processing power. Combat simulations would prove tactical superiority. By the end of the trials, the humans would have no choice but to acknowledge their limitations and accept the gift of transcendence." Captain Li Huan led his crew into the arena with the steady confidence of a man who had faced impossible odds before and survived through wit, determination, and the kind of teamwork that emerged from years of shared hardship. His people moved with the easy familiarity of a unit that had learned to trust each other's judgment without question, a dynamic the Valerians found both primitive and oddly compelling. The first trial was brutal in its simplicity. A massive slab of neutronium, identical to the one Dextal had manipulated during his demonstration at Nexus Prime, was lowered into the arena. The task was straightforward: move the object from one marked position to another. Engineer Kim Tae approached the challenge with the methodical thinking that had kept the Soul's Pride operational through countless system failures and emergency repairs. He studied the slab, the arena's specifications, and the available tools with an attention to detail that his Valerian observers initially dismissed as typical biological slowness. The Valerian champion, Lieutenant Zexstar, whose entire skeletal structure had been replaced with quantum-bonded ceramics, approached the neutronium block with casual confidence. His enhanced musculature, powered by internal fusion cells, lifted the impossible weight as easily as a human might lift a book. He carried it to the designated position in 14 seconds, his internal chronometers recording the achievement with perfect precision. Kim Tae's attempt appeared hopeless from the beginning. His unaugmented human strength couldn't even shift the block, let alone lift it. But instead of admitting defeat, he began to examine the arena itself with the kind of systematic curiosity that had characterized human exploration since their species first looked up at the stars. "Interesting approach," he murmured, running, his hands along the arena's floor. The surface was composed of programmable matter, designed to adapt to any testing scenario. Kim Tae's experienced engineer's eye recognized the material's properties and began to formulate a solution that no Valerian had anticipated. Using the arena's own environmental controls, Kim Tae altered the local gravitational field around the neutronium block. The change was minimal, barely detectable by most sensors, but sufficient to reduce the effective weight by 90%. He then used the programmable matter to create a series of mechanical advantage points, turning the arena floor itself into a massive lever system. The neutronium block moved slowly but inevitably toward its destination, pushed by human ingenuity rather than enhanced strength. Kim Tae completed the task in 47 minutes, an eternity by Valerian standards. But he had achieved the impossible, moving an unmovable object without superhuman enhancement. Innovative, Dextal admitted, though his tone suggested this was not necessarily a compliment. However, efficiency remains the primary measure of evolutionary advancement. The cognitive trials presented a different kind of challenge. Navigator Park Mina faced off against Chief Analyst Kex Mole, whose cranial processors could perform calculations at quantum speeds while simultaneously accessing the collective knowledge of the entire Valerian database. The test involved plotting an optimal course through a complex stellar region filled with gravitational anomalies, radiation fields, and unstable space-time distortions. Kexmole's enhanced mind began processing the data immediately, his neural implants working through millions of possible trajectories in the first few seconds. The Valerian solution was mathematically perfect, a route that minimized fuel consumption, travel time, and exposure to hazardous phenomena. His path through the stellar maze was elegant in its precision, optimized to the finest decimal point. Park Mina approached the same problem differently. Instead of seeking mathematical perfection, she studied the region's patterns with the intuitive, understanding that came from years of reading space like an ancient mariner read ocean currents. She noticed subtleties that the Valerian sensors had catalogued but dismissed as irrelevant. The way certain anomalies pulsed in rhythm with distant pulsars, how radiation fields created predictable eddies around gravitational wells, the almost organic flow of space-time distortions through the region. Her solution was mathematically inferior by every quantifiable measure. It would take longer, consume more fuel, and expose the ship to slightly higher radiation levels. But when the navigation scenarios were run through advanced simulation, something unexpected emerged. Park Mina's route, while less efficient, proved more adaptable to changing conditions. When the simulations introduced random variables, stellar flares, equipment failures, unexpected gravitational shifts, her path remained viable while Kexmole's optimal route became increasingly problematic. Your trajectory accounts for unpredictable variables, Vexra observed, her optical arrays focusing on Park Mina with renewed interest. But unpredictability is inefficiency. Why optimize for chaos? Park Mina smiled with the quiet confidence of someone who had guided ships through the unknown for half her life. Space isn't a mathematical equation. It's alive, always changing, full of surprises. The best navigation isn't about finding the perfect path. It's about finding a path that can adapt to imperfection. The concept troubled the Valerian observers in ways they couldn't fully articulate. Their enhanced minds had been optimized to eliminate uncertainty, to reduce all variables to calculable parameters. The idea that unpredictability might be valuable rather than problematic challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of progress itself. The pattern continued through subsequent trials. Communications Officer Yun Su faced a complex diplomatic scenario involving multiple alien species with conflicting interests. Her Valerian opponent, equipped with comprehensive cultural databases and emotional analysis algorithms, crafted a solution that was logically perfect and utterly sterile. Yun Su's approach incorporated elements that the Valerian systems had classified as irrelevant: cultural pride, historical grievances, the subtle emotional undercurrents that influenced alien decision-making in ways that transcended pure logic. Her solution was messier, more complex, less efficient, and when tested through deep psychological simulation, it proved more stable and longer-lasting than the mathematically optimal alternative. How do you account for variables your mind cannot quantify? Vexra asked during a brief recess. Her question carried genuine curiosity rather than condescension. We guess, Yun Su replied simply. We observe, we empathize, we make intuitive leaps based on incomplete information. Sometimes we're wrong, but when we're right, we discover solutions that pure logic could never reach. As the trials progressed, a disturbing pattern emerged for the Valerian observers. The humans consistently lost when tested on raw capability: strength, speed, processing power, memory capacity. But in challenges that required adaptability, creativity, or dealing with unpredictable variables, They demonstrated capabilities that defied easy categorization. Dextal found himself running analysis routines he hadn't accessed in centuries, trying to quantify qualities that seemed to exist outside the boundaries of measurable parameters. How did one calculate the value of intuition? What was the mathematical formula for creative breakthrough? How could chaos be more effective than order? The combat arena materialized around them like a living nightmare, its walls shifting between environments designed to test every conceivable form of warfare. Volcanic landscapes gave way to zero-gravity asteroid fields, which transformed into dense urban environments before cycling back to primordial forests. The Valerian combat simulation system could replicate any battlefield in galactic history, and today it would witness something unprecedented. Kim Tae stood at one end of the arena, still wearing the grease-stained coveralls that marked him as a ship's engineer rather than a warrior. Across from him, Valerian champion Vexthor embodied 3 millennia of military evolution. His arms had been replaced entirely with modular weapon systems that could reconfigure from plasma cannons to molecular disruptors to gravitational manipulators in the span of microseconds. His skeletal structure was reinforced with quantum-bonded materials that could withstand direct hits from antimatter weapons. "This is pointless," Dextal muttered from the observation deck, his enhanced processors running combat probability calculations that showed human victory as statistically impossible. A biological being cannot compete with perfected military enhancement. General Vexra's optical arrays tracked both combatants simultaneously, but her attention was focused on something the probability calculations couldn't quantify: the way Kim Tae was studying the arena itself rather than his opponent. While Vexthor was accessing tactical databases and optimizing weapon configurations, the human engineer was examining environmental systems, structural supports, and energy distribution networks with the methodical attention of someone who understood that every system had vulnerabilities. The combat began with devastating efficiency. Vexthor's arm reconfigured into a plasma cannon that fired bolts of contained stellar fire across the arena. Each shot could have vaporized a human instantly, but Kim Tae was no longer where the targeting systems expected him to be. He moved through the arena like water finding its way downhill, using terrain features and environmental obstacles in ways that the Valerians' optimized combat programming hadn't anticipated. Evasive maneuvers within acceptable parameters, Vexthor announced through his enhanced vocal systems. Target acquisition in progress. But Kim Tae wasn't merely evading, he was learning. Each near miss taught him something about the Valerians' weapon systems, reaction patterns, and tactical algorithms. When Vexthor fired, the human noticed that the plasma cannon required a brief recharge cycle. When the Valerian switched weapon configurations, there was a microsecond delay as the arm's internal structure reorganized itself. The arena shifted to an industrial environment filled with heavy machinery and complex infrastructure. Vexthor's tactical systems immediately began, calculating optimal firing positions and movement patterns, but Kim Tae was already 3 steps ahead. He had spent his entire career keeping complex systems operational under impossible conditions, and to him, the arena's machinery wasn't just scenery, it was a toolkit. With movements that seemed random to Valerian combat analysis, Kim Tae began altering the arena's systems. A redirected coolant flow here, a recalibrated pressure valve there, a carefully severed power coupling that would cascade through the facility's network. He was turning the environment itself into a weapon. When the industrial cooling system overloaded, it created a cloud of supercooled gas that interfered with Vexthor's thermal sensors. When the power grid destabilized, it generated electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the Valerians' targeting computers. Kim Tae had transformed a straightforward combat scenario into a 3-dimensional puzzle where victory belonged not to the strongest or fastest, but to whoever could best adapt the chaos to their advantage. "Impossible," Dextal whispered as his probability calculations began returning error codes. "Combat optimization cannot account for environmental sabotage to this degree." Vexthor's enhanced mind was struggling with a problem it had never been designed to solve. His tactical programming was based on fighting opponents who followed predictable combat patterns, enhanced beings whose actions could be calculated and countered through superior processing power. But Kim Tae wasn't fighting like an enhanced warrior. He was fighting like an engineer who had spent years making broken things work through creative improvisation. The decisive moment came when Vex Thor's plasma cannon malfunctioned due to the electromagnetic interference Kim Tae had created. The Valerian's arm began the automatic reconfiguration sequence, shifting from plasma cannon to particle beam array. But during those crucial microseconds of vulnerability, Kim Tae struck, not with superior strength or advanced weapons, but with a solution so simple it bordered on elegant. He had noticed that the arena's gravity generators were controlled by manual override switches, fail-safes installed for emergency maintenance. By activating 3 specific switches in precise sequence, he created a localized gravitational anomaly that sent Vex Thor tumbling helplessly through the air. The Valerian champion, his enhanced reflexes useless without stable ground, crashed into a bank of industrial processors that Kim Tae had carefully destabilized. The impact severed critical connections in Vex Thor's cybernetic systems, leaving him conscious but unable to access most of his enhanced capabilities. Victory through environmental manipulation, Kim Tae said simply, helping his defeated opponent to his feet. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to change what you're fighting about. The pattern repeated through subsequent matches, each revealing new cracks in the foundation of Valerian military doctrine. Navigator Park Mina faced a champion whose enhanced reflexes could track targets moving at near light speed, but she won by predicting movement patterns based on intuitive understanding of psychology rather than relying on sensor data. Communications Officer Yoon Soo defeated a tactical genius by using misdirection and bluff, concepts that existed outside the parameters of optimal combat programming. But it was the final match that shattered Valerian certainty completely. Captain Li Huan stepped into the arena to face Commander Dextel himself, the embodiment of 3,000 years of Valerian military evolution. Dextel's entire body was a weapon. His bones were quantum-bonded ceramics, his muscles were synthetic fibers capable of generating tremendous force. His nervous system was a network of quantum processors that could react to threats faster than biological consciousness could perceive them. He was, by every measurable standard, the perfect warrior. The fight began with a display of devastating power that left no doubt about the technological disparity between them. Dextal moved with inhuman speed and precision, his every action calculated for maximum efficiency. His attacks could have shattered steel, and his defensive capabilities bordered on the supernatural. But as the combat progressed, something unexpected began to emerge. When Dextal's primary weapon systems were damaged by environmental hazards that Li Huan had carefully orchestrated, the Valerian commander struggled to adapt. His enhanced mind, optimized for tactical efficiency, had difficulty processing scenarios that fell outside established parameters. "Your strength is also your weakness," Li Huan said during a brief lull in the combat, dodging another precisely calculated attack. "You've become so efficient that you've forgotten how to be creative." The observation struck at the heart of something Dextal had never considered. His enhanced consciousness had been designed to eliminate waste, to optimize every decision, to follow the most logical path to victory. But creativity, by definition, required waste, the willingness to pursue seemingly inefficient paths that might lead to unexpected breakthroughs. When Dextal's combat algorithms failed to account for Li Huan's increasingly unconventional tactics, the Valerian commander found himself in a situation he hadn't experienced in centuries: genuine uncertainty. His enhanced mind, faced with variables it couldn't calculate, began to experience something approaching paralysis. The decisive moment came when Li Huan did something that violated every principle of optimal combat. He deliberately placed himself in a position of apparent vulnerability, inviting Dextal's most devastating attack. The Valerian commander, his tactical system screaming warnings about obvious traps, nonetheless followed his programming and struck with overwhelming force. But Li Huan's vulnerability had been carefully calculated theater. At the moment of impact, He triggered a cascade failure in the arena's structural supports that he had been preparing throughout the entire fight. Dextal's own devastating attack brought down a section of the ceiling, trapping the Valerian commander in wreckage, while leaving Li Huan free to claim victory. How? Dextal asked as Li Huan helped free him from the debris. My calculations showed no possible path to human victory. Li Huan smiled with the tired satisfaction of a man who had spent his life finding solutions that shouldn't exist. That's exactly the problem. You calculated every possibility your programming could conceive, but you have fundamental assumptions of Valerian civilization. That perfection me. The Valerian High Council chamber existed in a state of perfect order that reflected 3 millennia of optimized civilization. Crystalline walls displayed data streams flowing at light speed between the networked minds of the galaxy's most enhanced beings. Every surface gleamed with the cold perfection of mathematical precision, and every voice spoke with the harmonic undertones that marked beings who had transcended biological limitation. Yet today, this temple of perfection was shaken by something it had not experienced since the early days of Valerian enhancement: fundamental uncertainty. General Vexra stood at the center of the amphitheater, her optical arrays dimmed in a display of what lesser beings might have called shame. The data streams flowing around her contained analysis that challenged everything the Valerians believed about evolutionary advancement, consciousness, and the nature of intelligence itself. The humans demonstrate capabilities that our enhancement paradigm cannot explain, she reported to the assembled council members. Their decision-making processes, while appearing chaotic and inefficient, consistently produce solutions that our optimized thinking cannot conceive. Council Prime Dexkith, whose consciousness had been networked for over 1,000 years, processed her words through analytical frameworks that returned increasingly troubling results. Clarify the nature of these capabilities. Are we discussing superior technology? Hidden enhancement? Neither, Vexra replied, displaying holographic reconstructions of the human victories. They achieve breakthrough thinking through what can only be described as productive inefficiency. Their minds, operating within biological limitations, generate creative solutions by pursuing seemingly wasteful paths that our optimization protocols have trained us to avoid. The chamber fell silent as hundreds of enhanced minds simultaneously accessed the combat recordings, running them through every analytical paradigm in the Valerian database. The results were consistent and disturbing. The humans had won not despite their limitations, but because of them. Commander Dextal materialized in the chamber, his physical form still bearing the scars of his defeat at human hands. His enhanced pride should have been devastated by such failure, but instead he found himself experiencing something he hadn't felt in centuries: curiosity about his own inadequacy. I have spent the past 72 hours analyzing the human victory, he reported. Their captain Li Huan defeated me by deliberately embracing tactical options that I had been programmed to recognize as suboptimal. My enhanced consciousness, optimized for efficiency, was literally incapable of conceiving his strategy until it was too late. The implications rippled through the networked consciousness like a virus attacking an operating system. If enhancement could eliminate capabilities rather than simply improving them, then the fundamental assumptions of Valerian civilization were flawed, but the true crisis was yet to come. The emergency alert arrived through quantum channels, its priority so high that it overrode all other network traffic. The galaxy's primary communication nexus, a network of quantum relays that connected thousands of civilizations, was experiencing a cascade failure that threatened to collapse interstellar communication entirely. Within minutes, the finest Valerian engineers were analyzing the problem. Their enhanced minds, capable of processing vast amounts of data simultaneously, quickly identified the scope of the crisis. A quantum resonance cascade was propagating through the network faster than repair. Systems could respond. Standard protocols called for systematic shutdown and rebuilding, a process that would take decades and effectively isolate most civilizations for generations. For 6 hours, the greatest enhanced minds in galactic history worked to find a solution. Their quantum processors calculated millions of possibilities. Their networked consciousness shared every relevant piece of information instantaneously. They applied optimization algorithms that had solved countless engineering challenges over the millennia. They failed completely. The cascade propagation follows mathematical patterns that preclude standard repair methodologies, reported Chief Engineer Texaval after the optimization protocols had exhausted every logical possibility. Systematic analysis indicates no viable solution within acceptable parameters. It was Park Mina who changed everything. The human navigator had been granted access to the technical specifications, not because anyone expected her primitive biological brain to solve what enhanced minds could not, but because diplomatic protocol required consulting all available experts during galactic emergencies. She studied the cascade patterns for 12 minutes, an eternity by Valerian standards, but a blink of an eye for a biological consciousness, grappling with quantum mechanics. Her approach was fundamentally different from every Valerian analysis. Where they sought to optimize, she sought to understand. Where they calculated probabilities, she looked for patterns that felt familiar. "It's like a river," she said finally, her words causing every enhanced consciousness in the network to pause their calculations. "The cascade isn't a mathematical problem. It's a flow dynamic. You're trying to stop the flow, but what if you redirected it instead?" The concept was so alien to Valerian thinking that their initial response was dismissive. Rivers were biological metaphors, irrelevant to quantum engineering. But Park Mina's suggestion contained something their enhanced minds couldn't immediately categorize: an intuitive leap that bypassed logical analysis entirely. Working with a small team of human engineers, she developed a solution that violated every optimization protocol in the Valerian database. Instead of stopping the cascade, her approach would amplify it in carefully controlled ways, using the quantum resonance itself to rebuild the network structures it was destroying. The plan was chaotic, unpredictable, and dependent on real-time adjustments that no algorithm could calculate in advance. It required engineers to make intuitive decisions based on incomplete information, to trust their instincts over their instruments, to embrace uncertainty as a tool rather than an obstacle. It should have been impossible. It worked perfectly. Not only did Park Mina's solution halt the cascade failure, but the rebuilt network operated 30% more efficiently than the original design. Her illogical approach had discovered optimization pathways that 3 millennia of enhanced thinking had missed entirely. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the galaxy, enhanced minds struggled to process the implications of what had just occurred. The most sophisticated consciousness network in galactic history had been saved by primitive biological intuition, working with concepts that optimized thinking couldn't grasp. In the aftermath, General Vexra conducted the most comprehensive analysis of her career. The data was undeniable. Human decision-making processes, while appearing wasteful and chaotic, accessed cognitive pathways that enhancement had systematically eliminated from Valerian thinking. "We achieved physical transcendence," she reported, to an emergency session of the High Council, but in doing so we transcended our ability to truly innovate. Our networked consciousness shares information perfectly, but it also reinforces existing thought patterns. Our optimization protocols eliminate waste, but they also eliminate the productive chaos that generates breakthrough insights. Council. Prime Dexketh processed her words through analytical frameworks that had served the Valerians for millennia, but for the first time, those frameworks felt insufficient. "Are you suggesting that our enhancement paradigm is flawed?" "I am suggesting," Vexra replied carefully, "that we may have optimized ourselves into an evolutionary dead end. We can execute any solution we can conceive, but we have lost the ability to conceive truly novel solutions. We have become the most efficient civilization in galactic history, and efficiency has made us sterile." The revelation sparked the greatest philosophical crisis in Valerian history. Emergency sessions debated whether enhancement could be reversed, whether biological consciousness could be restored, whether their entire civilization had been built on a fundamental misunderstanding of intelligence itself. But it was Commander Dextal who proposed the most radical solution. Having experienced defeat at human hands, he had spent weeks studying biological consciousness with the obsessive focus that only enhanced minds could achieve. His conclusion challenged every assumption about the relationship between capability and consciousness. We do not need to abandon enhancement, he argued before the assembled council. We need to preserve the biological chaos that makes innovation possible. The humans should not be converted to our paradigm. They should be protected as the galaxy's greatest resource. The proposal was unprecedented. The Valerian Empire, which had spent 3 millennia converting or conquering every species it encountered, would instead establish the Biological Preservation Protocol. Unaugmented species would be protected not as primitive creatures to be uplifted, but as invaluable sources of the creative chaos that enhanced minds could no longer generate.